Hello?
Hello?
Thing on?
Testing. I think we're good.
I think we're good, man. Let's go. Let's do this.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the Paranormal Warehouse YouTube edition. For anybody that might be familiar with the podcast that we've had, we say the podcast, we've got, one episode?
Yeah, one episode.
Clayton, I know, has done some things on himself. So if you guys have listened before, welcome back. We've kind of been having some problems with some of the platforms and everything, so we've decided to try to just stick to YouTube here. I'm one of your hosts, Skyler.
I'm your other host, Clayton.
And this is the Paranormal Warehouse. Man, it's Christmas time. It's holiday time. You know, we're past Halloween. We're past what's considered the spooky part of the year. You know, this is still kind of cold, and you know we're getting close to Christmas here. You got any plans or anything you guys are thinking about doing?
No, just spend time with family. I'm actually trying to go ghost hunting somewhere.
Okay.
Probably somewhere like in Fort Worth, because it's all like cowboy abandoned buildings back over there where my grandpa used to patrol. He said he's seen things, heard things, all kinds of stuff. So we'll probably go do that with my girl if she's down. So we'll see.
Nice. Yeah, nothing really going on my end either. Obviously, with what we have going here, we work for a sporting team that season's kind of winded down. So we're in our off season right now, and so we've got time, we've got space. So this kind of works out good. We're really hoping now that we've slowed down. The past few years have just been crazy for us on our end, but now that we're kind of slowing down, we're hoping to be a lot more consistent with getting content out. The other problem is we live so far from each other, it makes it hard to meet up together in person. We're actually coming live to you, I guess not live, but from the warehouse itself right now, so we're able to be here together in person.
Yeah, thank God.
But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Man, me and Clayton, you want to kind of go into kind of your early life of this kind of stuff and kind of what got you into paranormal and
shit,
cryptids and what kind of stuff you're into and all that kind of stuff.
I think it was from that. I think it was Nickelodeon had it. Are You Afraid of the Dark? I think it was called. I think my dad, my mom, or someone had it laying around on like VHS. And I popped it in probably at like 5 or 6, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is kind of spooky." Because it was about like a kid who gets sucked down in the basement by like green like ooze, and he forgets people, and the house is cursed. And another one was like they're like in a cabin in the woods, and the telephone wire is getting cut, and it's like a werewolf or something eating the campers. And that always scared me, but I would always rewind it and get scared again. Because I felt like the joy from it, the adrenaline.
That rush.
Yes. And then slowly, surely got into, on sci-fi, I would see like Ghost Hunters and Destination Truth would come out, and I would watch those. Even like the Disney and Nickelodeon shows like iCarly and Hannah Montana and Zack and Cody, their Halloween episodes I always liked.
It's actually, Zack and Cody is one of my favorite ones when they're in the haunted hotel room together and they start doing the little ritual and everybody starts screaming. Oh, man.
And it turns out she's actually a real ghost at the very end. Mr. Motion's like, oh, crap. Oopsie. I do smell pizza. Yeah. I think that's what got me started. And then I remember as a kid, some stuff would happen in our house, but I think, it could just been me being a kid, my imagination was running wild, but I genuinely think something was going on in my house because the fire detector or alarm would go off at the middle of the night, and my grandpa took the batteries out and it still would go off, and he took the wires out and it still went off. There was this very weird circumstances, and then I don't want to say a priest came over, but I vaguely remember one of our priests came over and did something, and then it stopped. So I don't know if that was contributing to something, or that was just him visiting, because my grandpa was a part of the Knights of Columbus, and my grandma was part of like the female version of it, so they were very active in the church. So that just could have been a hey, we're doing this thing for the church, come down and hand out flyers or whatever it was. It could have been that, or it could have been something demonic. Because the way my mom said it was always like at 3 o'clock in the morning, which demons mock the Holy Trinity. Instead of 666, it's 333 to mock the Holy Trinity. So it could have been demonic, or it just could have been a faulty detector, and it had a secondary battery hidden that he didn't find.
Yeah.
Could have been anything, but he tore it off the ceiling. And then, God, probably 7 years later, I was at my great grandma's house, and I was playing on her computer. Those are like flash games, And a few years prior, her husband, my great-grandfather, passed away suddenly of a heart attack. And I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't like, I wasn't really thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, a cutscene happened in the game. I beat the level. Mm-hmm. Screen goes black, and he's standing in the bathroom where he died. He just kind of looking at me, smiling a little bit, kind of like checking in on me. And I kind of turned around, didn't see him, turned back around. He was there in the screen. I was like, "Oh, hey, Papa, I love you, miss you. What's going on?" I turned back around, and then nothing there. And I turned back to the monitor. He's gone. I'm like, "Okay, probably just make sure watching porn, on the computer, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing over there on my computer?" But yeah, I mean, there was that kind of stuff. Brushed it off. Wasn't really thinking it was a ghost until a few weeks later. I started watching Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and Distance and Truth. Like, oh, that was actually a ghost. Oh, this actually makes sense. And nothing ever happened for about 10 years, give or take.
Okay.
And then that's when I saw the Bigfoot at my aunt's property.
And which we'll get to those a little bit later as well, talking about more of our later life stuff. So you'd say probably in your earlier life you were more maybe exposed or more interested in maybe the paranormal side of this whole universe, I guess you could say, more than maybe extraterrestrials or cryptids or other stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of in your early life. Cool. And that's actually what, kind of got me and Clayton together and kind of made us friends here is when, he started working here and we started talking about our interests and our beliefs and things like that and the kind of stuff we were into. It became pretty clear pretty quickly how, our ideas on things and opinions and stuff really align with each other. And, we could tell each other stories and things that happened in our life that maybe other people would laugh at or wouldn't take seriously or things like that. And we can, look through it through an analytical perspective and blah, blah, blah. For myself, in my young life, I was kind of the opposite of it. The stuff that really fascinated me earlier on was the cryptid side of this whole universe. I've always thought the idea of unknown hidden creatures and things like that is very, very interesting. Of course, I'm sure most people that are involved in the Bigfoot world specifically, the one I remember the most vividly was seeing the Patterson-Gimlin footage for the first time on TV. And I can, it very vivid, the way it gave me goosebumps and everything, like just looking at that and, in my eyes, I believe it's 100% real. And at that time, I believed the same thing. And in my young life, I never really had any kind of paranormal happenings happen to me on that side of it. My mother did pass away when I was a young child, and I never really had anything on that side of it. Alien, same thing. A little bit later in my life, a couple things happened, but kind of my young formative time when I was becoming interested in this, never really popped into my mind. Another one that kind of bouncing off of what you were talking about earlier, one that I always really liked too as a kid was Goosebumps. Yeah. The Goosebumps series, all the different cool, wacky episodes of that. And, just it's good, it gets your brain thinking outside the box and things like that. And it just, I think it's good for young kids to, have an active imagination and think about those kind of things and get into the world of, ghosts and extraterrestrials and cryptids and all that stuff, because these topics are becoming more and more accepted in the world and more open. I mean, we have the Pentagon admitting that UFOs are real and they don't know who flies them. Yeah. The U.S. government acknowledges aliens exist, and so it's from being so just the difference in from when we were kids to now is so different in the public perspective of everything and all that stuff. And it, I kind of wish at the same time we could have been kids during this time to experience that same kind of wonder and all that stuff. But we've come to a point now in our adulthood where, with all this new stuff that's coming out about all these different phenomenon, I think we're entering into kind of a golden age of understanding, and more people are starting to think about this stuff kind of outside the box and not necessarily just
brush it off.
Brush it off or go about their days.
You're just kind of crazy. It's not real. You're crazy. Well, but then, I kind of get that too, because we're at the time now we have all this technology. We have these, cameras that can pick up different, things. Like, because back in the day, you couldn't really just go, grab your phone and take a picture of a UFO or a Sasquatch or a ghost. But now it's like, hey, there's something over there. Let me get my phone out, take a picture, post it to Facebook, whatever. Now 1,000 million people see it, and it becomes like, oh, you know what? I didn't say this before, but I had some experience at that place. Or it starts to get the ball rolling, and more people come out and say, yeah, I had the same experience with this thing. And kind of segue back to what you were saying about the government saying UFOs exist. The government acknowledges Bigfoot too. There's pamphlets given to, I want to say the Air Force, or maybe the Marines or Army, when they go training out in the forests, up by like Yosemite and stuff like that. In the pamphlet it says, beware of these plants and be aware of these predators, and it gives a poison ivy, poison oak, it was like mountain lions, bear, Sasquatch. Why would it say Sasquatch under predators if they're fake? You know what I mean? So I think that gives validity to the government knows Sasquatch is out there and they have it under predators to watch out for while you're base camping for your troop or your platoon or whatever. So I think that's pretty wacky that they have that classified under a cougar, which is real, black bear, grizzly bear. Those are real.
It's alongside all other real animals.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, that's kind of like, why is that there?
Yeah, and it to kind of, you helped me kind of get my thoughts together on my long-winded point here, but basically it's just, there's so much evidence now.
Yes.
Compared to what there used to be. There's so much more videos, photos, good quality of everything that it's starting to become harder to ignore.
Yeah.
And that's something as I guess, we're the most amateur of amateur cryptid investigators that are paranormal investigators that you could possibly be. But it's an exciting time to be invested in these phenomenons because
more and more things are happening.
Yeah, more and more things are happening out there.
More people are coming in and giving their side of the story to it, and we're like, that's actually interesting.
And so, that's, kind of just looping back for this channel itself and kind of this podcast, and, that's our plan with this, is not only to just have recorded episodes sitting down together talking about different things, but, we do plan in the future to do, paranormal investigations and, go out on Bigfoot expeditions and things like that. And, we're lucky, the area we live in, Texas has a lot of different types of phenomenons and things that you can view. There's some of the most haunted places in the country are in Texas. There's a lot of them.
In the world, too.
There's a lot of different cryptids. Texas is cool because it has a lot of local cryptids to different areas that may not get as much light, and that's something I think I would really like to touch on. Like, for example, the Goat Man, the haunted bridges, and there's a few towns that have some real haunted bridges that are supposed to be some pretty real, serious areas. And so that'd be something that, definitely we're interested in doing. And, work and personal life obviously gets in the way, and finding times we can get together isn't the easiest. But that's kind of our goal for this channel, is to bring local attention as well as hopefully the world, just to see the kind of things we have going on in our area. And we're not Ghost Adventures, we're not Destination Truth.
No.
We don't have professional stuff and real down to earth investigations that if we don't find anything, we're not going to yank anybody's chain or try to do anything. And if we see something serious, we're going to take it seriously and make sure that people understand that this kind of stuff is not a joke. It's not a game. It's not something that should be taken lightly. There's some very real possibilities of bodily harm, spiritual harm, all types of things that could be encountered trying to do this stuff. So down the line, if you see any videos like that, we'll reiterate it, but think about what you're doing, be smart, tell someone where you're going, have a plan together in case something happens. If you have a firearm and you feel comfortable carrying it, carry a firearm. But just, trying to do as much as you can to be safe on that. And, of course, we will be doing that and trying to lead by example the best we can on that side. But, yeah, just kind of, this episode, again, it's just, I know a lot of people may have heard the first episodes on Spotify, and you may hear a lot of information you already heard again, but we're just trying to kind of round it out and just get a good, solid introduction episode in. Clayton, if you want to kind of go over maybe some of your more adulthood type experiences, some of the things you've had happen to you more recently, and kind of how, if they've changed any beliefs or anything like that, or, just kind of give us a little rundown.
So back to the Bigfoot, I was saying, when I was kind of going over stuff, this was probably, I was about 14, 15 years old. I was at my aunt's house. Her property is literally off the highway. You go down a dirt road in about a mile or two, and it's like middle of the woods. Like her property backs up to Bowie National Forest, I think, or maybe the Big Thicket. It's one of those national forests out by Tyler, Lindo area. I've always heard stories, even on TV, like there's Sasquatch in that area, whatever. I never really took it to heart, I guess, because I've been out there a billion times, never seen a footprint or heard the whoops or the knocks. So I'm like, okay, maybe because there's lights around here, and then her son has his truck, and the noise pollution, they don't come around that area.
At this time, were you interested already in the phenomenon? Were you aware of it at least, or so you were already kind of?
And for everyone listening, a lot of people are like, well, if you think about Bigfoot, he'll like manifest in front of you, or something in the form of Bigfoot manifest. I wasn't thinking about it. I was dead asleep. But I was on the couch dead asleep, and I heard something outside the window, not like directly outside, but like out, and it kind of spooked me because I woke up and I heard like rustling and grunting and stuff, and I was like, huh, what? Like, what's going on? And I kind of go to the window to see, because there's deer out there, there's feral hogs that root in her grass. So maybe it's a hog out there, trying to get grub. And I look, and literally from where it started to the property next door is about a half football field, so about 50 yards. It walked from the left side to the right, and maybe 6 or 7 steps. And it was giant. Like, I'm talking about from where I was to where this thing was, 9-10 feet. I'm not even exact, 9-10 feet. I'm about 5'11". My head was probably to its waist if I was sitting next to it. I mean, this thing was gigantic. That could just be me seeing it the first time, my eyes adjusting, but it was maybe 10 feet from me. Like, it was gigantic. I could see its muscles moving because she has these lights above her property, like kind of like, weirdly enough, like street lights, even though there's no reason for it. And I could see its like leg muscles moving, and it took gigantic strides. And the next morning, that morning, I guess, because it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, my aunt wakes up, and I was like, hey, can I ask you a weird question? And she was like, yeah, sure, why not? I don't know, And I was like, have you ever seen something weird out in your property before? Like maybe like a Bigfoot or something? And she hits me with the, when you live out here as long as I have, you start to see some things.
The classic country, living out in the middle of nowhere. You just don't think about it, don't worry about it.
And I think that's her way of saying, yeah, I've seen it before. Just don't, don't talk to it, don't worry about it, like, it is what it is, like, and, I think that was her way of saying yes without saying yes to calm me down, because I was kind of freaked out seeing this gigantic Sasquatch kind of walk, 50, maybe 40 yards across our property. And then, actually, I forgot to tell you, it whooped. That's how I knew it was a Bigfoot. It whooped, too. Because when it walked by, it went whoop, whoop, whoop 3 times, like super, super loud. And I was like, oh, shit. I'm going back to bed, because I didn't see that. It's like I was genuinely scared. I didn't know if it was going to turn around, see me peeking through the window, and come charging at me. I didn't know. So I went back to bed, pulled the couch, pulled the cover of my head, and went to sleep because I was genuinely scared until the next morning when I talked to my aunt about it. And she basically was like, yeah, he or she is real. It's out there. I've seen it a few times without saying it verbatim.
Were you able to get like a view of the body profile? Was it more wide and kind of built, or was it kind of skinnier? Or
it was
more
like super muscular, like it's been like working out, like super jacked for what it was.
But not that like, what's that World's Strongest Man guy off YouTube where he's as wide as he is?
It was slender.
Okay.
But
tone, muscular, yeah.
Like I could see its muscles.
Practical use muscles.
Yes.
Not show
like
muscles.
like his thigh. I could see his thigh muscle moving, and the way it swung his arms. I kind of see like the biceps and shoulder like rotating when it strides. And I was like, Jesus Christ, what is that? Who are you? Kind of. But it was just strange.
Yeah.
And then I had another Bigfoot encounter not too long ago. This was like a year ago. I was on a birthday trip with a few of my uncles and cousins, and my aunt was there too, and one of my uncle's friends. We were out by Canyon Lake, so like New Brunsville kind of area. If you go down there, there's always like the big Bigfoot, like you put in the ground, like the gardening, silhouettes, I've always heard there's Sasquatch in the area because there's hill country, there's caves down there. People are exploring caves all the time down there, and it was literally the last day. We were literally packing up that afternoon, but it was the morning we were packing up, and I'm out there smoking a cigar, and all of a sudden the birds stop chirping. It gets super dead quiet. I mean, super still, like. You can hear, like a penny drop from across the way. And there's trails on the other side. It's like where we are on the Airbnb, we're on like a hill area. You look down on the valley, you can see the lake to your left, kind of, and then a big gorge where the dam is. If it floods, it goes over the dam and gorges on the gorge and overflows and floods. And there's a little pathway you can see on the other side. People walk, and I've seen people walk on it a few times while I was there. But this thing, I don't know what it was. I mean, I know what it was, but I don't know what it was. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was super far away, but you can tell it was bigger than an average human. This thing had to be at least 7 to 8 feet tall. From where the path is upwards, it's all hills. It's all cave systems and hills. It ran from the top of that gorge, the bottom of the gorge, the top of the gorge, 20 feet, it jumped off and ran straight up the side of the hill, or not towards me, but kind of where I am, and still super quiet. I can hear grunting and moaning and grunts, and then the trees started to sway, like just giant trees are starting to sway, and there's no wind, and I'm like, that's a fucking Sasquatch. 100%. And I hear a branch snap. I hear another grunt, and it stops. Nothing happens for about 5-10 minutes, and then I start seeing deer come up. I start hearing the birds chirping, and I'm like, son of a bitch, that was a Sasquatch. Like it literally just ran across this like 20-foot gorge, and just hightailed it. And I asked someone at the bar, because we ate lunch at one of the little bars, and said, hey, are there any cave systems, any like weird stuff like by the lake? And the lady was like, yeah, there's a small one, but no one goes there because a Bigfoot lives there. She kind of laughed, and I really wanted to be like, well, you're actually right. Like the legend is true. Like
I seen it. And was this? My brain may have. That happens a lot.
Yeah,
What did you say? How far this was from you? The second one?
Oh my god, like a mile.
So it was a lot farther than the first one.
I mean, we're on a 1,000-foot plus hill. I mean, it's in the hill country. Like.
So you were kind of looking down on it.
Yes, okay. Like I mean, it was a good mile of just. I mean, it ran. It was, like I said, like from the bottom of the gorge to the top where the cliff is, easy 20, 30 feet. Jumped down and booked it another 30, 40 yards up and climbed up the ravine, and it went into the little valley where I was overlooking.
And of course, this has already been on my mind and thinking about it. People will always say, oh, well, why didn't you stop and take a video? Or why didn't you stop and take photographs? And people, I don't know why people think that smartphone cameras are the same quality as National Geographic Planet Earth that have sat in place for 6 months to get a 30-second clip of a rat running through a snow tunnel.
Yeah.
Like, when your adrenaline is pumping, when you get surprised by something like that, especially when it's at a far distance, recording is, if you even remember to try to record, the odds of you actually picking up something good are very, very slim. Most encounters, like, I mean, that was probably, you saying you're hearing sounds and kind of getting that feeling for a little bit before, but you probably physically saw it for just
4 seconds tops.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's being generous. I mean, I recorded the aftermath, I guess you can say, but my phone was on the table. I was literally, like, the table was like 2 feet behind me, and I'm leaning over smoking a cigar.
Yep.
Because I had one left, and I wasn't going to waste it from the night previous. And so I smoked it in the morning, and then it just came up, and I was like, wait a minute. Well, it came up. I was like, oh, Bigfoot. Because there was deer to the left of me that morning, and I didn't hand feed them, but I threw them scraps of, like, bread, chicken, or whatever.
You gave a deer chicken?
Yeah. What? Hey, it ate it.
Had some cannibal deer running around.
It ate it. But, like, as soon as it got quiet, the deer left. The birds left. I didn't hear any birds. I didn't see any mice. Nothing was even, like, alive. Like, it literally, like, felt like someone hit a pause button.
Mm-hmm.
And I was me and this thing, the only thing not frozen in time.
It's a good way to describe it.
And my uncle came out, and he's like, what are you doing? And I explained to him, and he gave me, like, yeah, whatever, kind of look. And then, as I was talking to the lady, I looked at him. He was like, okay, maybe. Because, like, I always take the locals' opinion on it.
Of course, and that's, something kind of feeding back into that same thing of kind of wanting to get the more local side of everything on our side with investigations is, the Native Americans and the people that have lived there for generations, they're the ones that know about this kind of stuff, and they don't want to share this information with people who take it as a joke or aren't respectful toward them and blah blah. And these people have been there, they've seen it, they've lived with it, and
they have names for it.
Yeah, and those are like the most important information sources, in my opinion, when it comes to these kind of phenomena.
I mean, like, for example, like I know our next episode is probably Bigfoot, the more of the Native American to modern side, but kind of just like kind of a glimpse into that. Like, if you actually go through and talk to people who are Native American, because I've had friends at school who are Native American, and I've talked to their grandparents about it, and they're like, when they were, in the 40s and 30s, when they were kids, the grandparents were on the reservation saying, don't go out at night, or the wild men will get you. Mm-hmm. Who are the wild men? And then they were like, it's the white man would say Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I'm like, oh, okay. And, like, I remember one time the grandfather said, way back in the day, the tribe leader that belonged to his tribe went to a small battle with these wild men over bears and fish off of somewhere in the hill. I forgot where in the hill country it was. I think it was like maybe like Hamilton or Halton, whatever it is right there, and Star, like Comanche, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
In the area, and there was a battle or something happened, and I was like, really? He goes, yeah, it's been passed down from generation to generation because I'm descendant from one of the warriors that fought in this battle from the wild men, because they came in the middle of the night, took the berries, took the fish, took deer meat, and they're like, hey, the wild men, because they even said the wild men tribe took it, as in there was a group of Bigfoot that the Indians knew, the Americans knew of.
And that's opening a whole nother can of worms, which we will get into much more in depth in the Sasquatch episode about our Bigfoot group of people, or are they an animal, or, and we'll go much more in depth on each topic that we really, really sink our teeth into, kind of more in depth on our personal beliefs on those kind of things and stuff like that. But yeah, those local people, man, they're such a
interesting
gold mine of knowledge, and that's all you have to do, just be respectful and take everything you hear seriously. If it's the most unrealistic thing you've ever heard in your life, that person at least believes that they've experienced it, and you weren't there, so that you don't have the right to tell someone that what they say is ridiculous or preposterous or blah 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 blah. So as we go into our different topics more, we'll definitely kind of sink in. That'll kind of be the style for these episodes as we go into these topics. Sasquatch, kind of going through the whole history of it, not just modern. What it was like in early times into the more modern times. Same thing with UFOs, because same thing with Native Americans. Native Americans have been talking about the star people for thousands of years.
Oh yeah,
thousands of years. Spirits and things like that. They've been talking about this stuff since before the white man ever glimpsed this place over here. And so who are we to tell them that they're wrong or that what they say is preposterous?
Even the cavemen, like, they saw woolly mammoths, they drew woolly mammoths. They saw the saber tigers, they drew saber tigers. There's a cave in France where they have the saber tigers and the woolly mammoths etched on by the cavemen, but also they have what would be a gray alien, like the small gray, the stereotypical weird face, big eyes, etched into the cave wall. Because they saw the mammoths, they drew it. They saw the tigers, they drew it. They saw this thing, they fucking drew it. So I think that even that's BC.
There's ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and things from other nations where that's a UFO. That's a space shuttle. That's there's a dude in a spacesuit. That's not. There's no reference of mine to that's what it is.
It's either aliens or into the can of worms, a lost civilization that maybe the flood from the Bible is because we were getting too much technology and God flooded the world to de-technology or kind of de-age from technology. That could be the same thing too. Maybe we are the aliens. You know what I mean?
Yep. My grandpa always used to tell me when I was a little kid that we came from Mars. That's what he would always tell me. He said that we used to live on Mars and that we destroyed Mars and then we came and moved to Earth and that we're the aliens. And so that'll be stuff we kind of really, really sink our teeth into here. Me and Clayton are both pretty ADD, so if you get us going off on these tangents, we'll talk about this shit for 5 hours.
6 days later, same topic.
So besides Sasquatch, and man, I hate trying to go back now and missing that we didn't talk about it before. But part of one of the reasons we decided to go with the name of this podcast and kind of what gave us this idea is at our place of work for this team, there are multiple paranormal experiences and well known. The most known one, I'm not going to say where it's at exactly, but there's a ghost known over there that lives in one of the buildings that's around here that her name is Alice, and a lot of very high up people in this organization, people who have a lot to lose by talking about things like this and stuff, they have stories about things that they've seen and things that have happened to them that it kind of makes you question things, and that's something that we have. We'll add these either in the comments maybe or find a way to be able to bring them up on some videos, but we have had our own kind of not paranormal encounters, because on my end nothing really happened, but we've got some really good photos of some pretty interesting stuff from inside our buildings, and there's been a few unnamed coworkers that have had some very interesting encounters. One that stands out to me was in that same building. It was the middle of the summer, super hot, and I had 2 people working over at another building. So I went to go drive to pick them up in our little off-road vehicle, and there's quote AC inside the room that they were working in, but they were sitting outside of the room, out in the main tunnel area,
midsummer,
in the middle of the summer,
in Texas.
And it was hot,
like 100 degrees.
And I pulled up, and I'm like, "Yo, what are you guys doing out here?" And the one girl, she was blaring Christian music, and I pull up, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" And they both looked at me, and they were like, "Skylar, I'm not going back in there. We were in there counting by ourselves, and this box from the top shelf, it was well placed on the shelf. It was a big, heavy box. That box came tumbling off that shelf in front of them, and they did not like that very much." So that kind of, once, same thing with Clayton. He has a few things that happened to him over there that once we started thinking about that, we were like, dude, we should make a podcast and talk about this, and it, just kind of developed into something we wanted to do.
Yeah. And to kind of go back on that, this box was not empty too.
No, it was heavy. It was full.
Because where we work, it's in a warehouse, obviously, but for the team, we have a store, and the extra, I guess, pieces to like the stands, the extra pieces to like the
in any retail store, they have their like the little counters and the little frames where they hang the clothes so you can look through everything. All the fixtures. Basically.
So we had fixtures that weren't being used. This box was 50, 60 pounds.
Yes, it was heavy, full of metal, and
it levitated and was thrown at the 2 associates. Like, if that doesn't scream, "Get out of my area, I'm going to kill you or hurt you," that's a good sign. Because I've seen that box. I know exactly where that box was, what was in it, because I remember seeing it and looking at it previously to when this happened. Because I remember we put all that stuff up there, and it's, it wasn't even on the edge. It was firmly in the middle of the rack. So, that's kind of crazy. But the first day I was over there, I was taking the second one over there. Skylar over here was the first one. He opened up, and I walked in, and he jokingly was like, "Oh, thank God you're here. I thought the ghost was going to get me." And I was like, we talking about the ghost? Ghost over here. He's like, yeah, there's a ghost. He tells me the people who have seen her and stuff and the experiences. I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. But as a kid, I always heard this particular building was haunted.
And as we keep talking about these kind of things, it's going to be harder and harder to try to, it'll be pretty easy to put the pieces together here. I don't want to use certain words and phrases. It's not too difficult to figure out.
Yeah, sports team Texas.
Where we're at right now. But, we try to keep it as anonymous as possible because we don't want any legal backlash or anything like that. If it, it may get to the point where we just say fuck it and start just making a disclaimer. But for now, we'll try to keep it as quote anonymous as possible.
So I'm leaning against a wall doing shirts. I'm counting to make sure everything's tagged right, and I'm leaning on a wall, and next to the wall is the office. He comes out of the office and goes to the bathroom, and where you go to the bathroom is past this staircase that goes up to this loft area where the ghost has been seen numerous times by people.
There's a lot of industrial type
equipment,
big AC units, electrical switches, boxes, a lot of
CO2 container. Because I posted on our Instagram, same name as the podcast.
The pictures are on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll go back on how I took them, but he goes to the bathroom. I'm thinking of it, and I get that strange feeling of someone's looking at me, and I look up, and there's maybe 10 of us in there. Everyone's accounted for except Skylar. I look up in the loft, and I see a black silhouette of someone up there, and I'm like, oh man, this dude Skylar over here trying to play tricks on me, thinking I'm going to see a ghost, but it's really him, and I'm going to go, oh my god, it's a ghost, everybody look. And it, no features, no face, just a black silhouette, and it turns, and it goes to kind of like the right, to its right. And I'm like, okay, where's he going? And he comes out of the restroom, and I'm like, "Hey, man, okay, do you remember the conversation we had? Where like we were like, for a good 5 minutes. I was like, dude, you're trying to scare me. Stop." You're like, "No, I'm not doing it." I'm like, "I saw you. You're gaslighting me." And he's like, "Dude, I promise. I put it on my dogs or whatever. I did not go up there with a coat or anything to try to scare you." I'm like, yeah, whatever. I want to stay behind and do some investigation. Took 10, 15-ish pictures. The last picture I caught was the picture on our Instagram of the ghost. And it's literally, if you look at it, you see like a brown thing in the middle of it. That's one of the boxes behind it. So it's transparent. And I tried to recreate it. Me and Scott both did. We took the flash on. We stood next to it. Different angles. We couldn't even get remotely close to recreating the photo. And I had and it's summer when I took this picture. Up there, it's hot too. And I vaguely remember it being really cold up there when I took that picture. And so I think it was drawing my energy and my heat or whatever, how ghosts do with the coldness. It was drawing that out from like the air duct or something.
And again, these photos were not. This was not something where it was like, oh, we see this entity, let's get a photo of it. Yes. We kind of just started taking a bunch of pictures of various areas and then going back and seeing what we could find. And when I saw it, it gave me chill bumps. It was very interesting. And this building is not old, but it was built in the 90s. The new building, funnily enough, this building's only a few years old. And again, now people are going to be like, oh, this is obvious as hell. I had an experience in the new building where I had forgot my keys to get into the warehouse, and I was waiting outside of our warehouse, and I asked our secretary, I guess you could call her at the time. She normally would get there before me, so I knocked. There was no answer, and so I called her and wanted to see if she was there. She told me she wasn't there. So I'm standing up against like a typical drop gate of a warehouse. If you've ever worked in an area that has a few warehouses inside of a building or different areas in there that they get closed off with like a drop gate. And all of a sudden, it was as if someone took their hand and pushed it up against the drop gate and slid it all the way down the drop gate like they were walking around on the inside. So I'm like, oh yeah, haha, very funny. And so I call Cindy and I'm like, all right, haha, very funny. Can you please let me in? And she's like, I'm really not there. I promise you I'm not there. So I am a little bit freaked out. So I went back against the other backside. And eventually somebody was able to come up, pop the door open for me. And I went inside, dark, lights were out, and I went looking throughout that warehouse. There was not a soul in sight. And that kind of wigged me out. And I thought it was strange because, that building's not very old. And on top of that, Clayton has a really good photo that's also on the Instagram.
Two photos.
Two pretty good photos of...
different days, too.
Some interesting stuff from in this same new building that... I don't know. And, when we go into ghosts and things like that, we'll go a little bit more in depth to it. So, you know, it's interesting, but...
do you have any stories that like ghosts or cryptid or aliens?
Man, for me, I don't have as many experiences until actually recently. I've had some interesting stuff happening, but, early on, I heard a lot of stories from my grandparents and my dad. That'll be something, if you listen to our first episode on the podcast platform, originally we were going to get an interview with my grandparents who had a very, very interesting experience out at Greer Island involving a very interesting creature. And I can tell the story later on if I don't get an opportunity to interview them again, but I would actually really like for that story to be told by my grandmother because it happened to her, And
or go back to Spotify and look at it.
Yeah, but, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But, early on, I have a memory of, I don't remember how old, maybe somewhere in the 8 to 12-year-old range. Me and my sister were sitting outside at my grandparents' house out in the field, and we definitely saw a UFO. It was very far off, very small little dot, but it was moving in such an erratic way that definitely was not anything else. Just a little quick experience. And the things that I have that happened to me and that have happened to me are a little more, I guess people would, when it comes to the paranormal world, when you get into the bare surface, Bigfoot and, UFOs and stuff. It's not considered as woo is the word they use, as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of more experiences with like energy and things like that. A thing that I get a lot, if people have heard of the call of the void, I say a lot, not a lot, but that a couple times that have stood out to me that are very, very intense and memorable. The call of the void of like people talking about like they stand on a bridge and all of a sudden they want to start jumping off. It's similar to that, but it's something that has happened to me when I've been in super, super deep, isolated areas of nature. One of the ones I can remember, I was out at Mount Massive with my aunt, and we were getting ready to try to summit Mount Massive. And behind our campsite, there was this real pretty creek, mountain stream coming down the mountain, and there was this big log that went over the creek, and I went over the creek to explore, but by myself walking along the river, and I went off this path into the deeper part of the woods, and it started out just kind of slow, but it was almost like being in the static of a TV, not visually, but the feeling and like the sound. It was almost like a kind of like a buzzing and our blood rushing to the ears. And it's like a draw, like it's pulling you, and I can feel it. And it's basically saying like, forget about why you're here. Keep walking into the woods, walk deeper, go off the path over there, keep walking, come, don't worry. And it's not like everything gets blurry, but there's some kind of distortion, and it affected me audio, visually. Again, it's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but very, very intense feeling of just, go lay down under that bush and fall asleep, and you start getting kind of tired and shaking myself out of it and going back. Still, like as I'm going back toward him, I can feel it trying to pull me back almost, and wanting me to come back and like just keep exploring, you're fine, blah blah blah. And once I got back across the river, it was like entering a new world. It completely disappeared, didn't feel like it all. Kind of freaked me out. Later on, a few years later, I was hiking deep in the Sam Houston National Forest with a few of my friends. We were probably like 12 miles in. We were really far. And we were getting ready to turn around and go back because we didn't have service, and we thought the trail, if we followed it, would eventually loop back around, but it didn't. So we get to this area right where we stopped at. The trail kept going, and I, same kind of thing. I'm like, hey, I want to just kind of, while y'all are talking and figuring out how we're going to do this, resting for a second, I'm going to just keep going for a little bit longer and see. And I come around the corner of this trail, and it looks like something out of a Lord of the Rings fantasy movie, blah, blah, blah. It's like a tunnel of the way the trees grow over the top of this trail. And this trail is not small. It's wide. You could drive a vehicle through there easily. And it was the same kind of thing. I'm walking down this trail, and it's like a never-ending hallway that keeps stretching out. It's just a straight line. I can see it all the way, this tunnel of trees. And it was the same kind of thing. It was like, I get this feeling of just keep walking, forget about your friends. Don't worry about them. Like, keep coming. Come deeper, come explore, just keep going. Don't worry about them. You can find your way back. It wasn't as intense on like the static feeling, but it was a very intense draw of just come deeper into the woods. And Sam Houston National Forest has a lot of Sasquatch. Native Americans, of course, used to be in that area, and all types of old world stuff. That's it's an old forest. And same kind of thing. I kept going. Finally, I shook it off and went back and got with my friends, and I felt normal again. But it's a very, very interesting phenomenon, very interesting feeling.
Did you say one, or you think one followed you home because your friend mocked it or something like that? You're hiking.
Yeah. So then there was another time. So I'm again, when we talk about different phenomenons, we'll kind of talk about. But I'm big into nature spirits and things like that I believe in, and the earth itself being alive, Mother Nature being a entity itself. And, I've been talking about nature spirits, and myself and my friend out in kind of the Benbrook, Texas area, there's an area called Whiskey Flats, and it used to have an old frontier trading post, and it's a pretty heavily wooded area for being right in the middle of town. It's actually a public hunting area by Army Corps of Engineers. And we walked to thing. And I'm talking about, and we're just talking about nature spirits, and kind of he doesn't take it seriously. He's joking around about it, not being serious, not being respectful. And we go to leave because we stopped there to take a little safety meeting. And we were going to go back onto the trail to get to the lake and the creek to start fishing. And he starts walking off in the opposite direction. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, this is the way we got to go. And I'm like, no, it's not. The way we need to go is that way, the way we just came from, back to the trail so we can get to the lake. And he's getting upset, and he's acting a little weird. He's getting angry. He's not wanting to do anything, blah, 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 blah. And he keeps arguing with me. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, you go that way.
Yeah.
I will go the way we're supposed to go, and we'll see what's up. 2, 3, 4 minutes later, he comes up walking behind me, and he was freaked out. So I don't know if he had something happen a little more that he didn't want to talk about, but he was pretty freaked out. And he was like, dude, he's like, you're right. I don't know why I felt so convinced that going that way was the right way, because it's not. And I realize that now. But at that time, I was so convinced. And blah, blah. I was like, and that was the nature spirits, in my opinion. They were kind of telling you, like, hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Like,
it's kind of cheesy to look at, but it's like a horror movie. The killer's fate, and the killer's on gives, and the killer comes up behind with a machete, chops his head off. It's like, oh yeah, you mocked the killer, and then it came up and killed you, kind of, yeah. So he mocked it, and they were like, okay, you mocked me, watch this, and it put like a blockout trance.
And so that night when we got back, we were having a couple beers, just talking, sitting out on my front porch talking about nature spirits, and he was taking it much more seriously at that time and kind of wanting to learn about it and blah, blah, blah. So we're talking about it, and all of a sudden I hear this, like, screaming, screeching sound at the far, like, just imagine you're looking out straight, the far right-hand side of my property. I live on about 7 acres. And I got quieted, and I was like, dude, did you hear that? And he was like, okay, yeah, right, blah, blah. And right as he says that, this thing starts screaming. Don't know what it was. It screams, and it travels from the right-hand corner of my property all the way across in front of us. Never saw anything. It was probably, if I had to guess, maybe 50 feet from us, sound-wise. Went in front of us, and it went all the way over to the left-hand side of my property in just a few seconds. And that was... that day, I think, kind of opened his eyes a little bit and kind of, had him understand a little bit. And that's something that I also experience is usually when I talk about things, or when I start looking into things, or when I start, getting into topics, things may start happening to me. There was this time period where I was really, 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 really into listening to a bunch of episodes of Confessionals and Sasquatch Chronicles and everything, and I still do, but not as intense as I was at that time. And I was at the coast doing a fishing trip. I like to go camping down there. And driving back, I'm listening to this 2-3 hour podcast episode about the Confessionals, or by the Confessionals. Can't remember what episode it is, but this girl is talking about these things that are happening to her, and about a 3-toed tree, bogart, tree sprite, something I'd never heard of. Her mom was a witch, all this crazy shit. But she starts talking about these things that were happening with this supposed entity. She came home from school one day, and her dad was getting mad at her and asking her why she was breaking the ends of the blinds off. If anyone has, those cheap plastic blinds, the way where the cord runs through on either side to lift it up, those ends, they break off really easily. And that was happening. And then a few days later, he started asking her why she was taking the screws out of the door and leaving them on the floor, like where the door knob gets screwed into the door. And so I get home. The next morning when I wake up, my blinds have multiple of the end pieces broken off of the blinds, nowhere to be found. I know my cat didn't eat them. I know, and my grandparents were still living in the same house that I live in alone now at that time with me. I with them more technically, but and my grandpa was asking me why I was breaking the blinds. And I was like, I'm not breaking the blinds. And I started getting a little freaked out. Ooh. And same thing within the next couple of days. The doorknob, the screws started coming loose on the doorknob and coming out and getting unscrewed. And that was it. That freaked me the fuck out. And I stopped being involved with that for a little bit. And then same kind of thing, listening to Sasquatch. My grandma had 2 really interesting things when she was walking out to her car. she heard this thing walking along our tree line, along where our thing is. She said it sounded giant, and that it was making these noises and these screams that it made her whole body start shaking, where she was so scared she couldn't control herself. She said she'd, in 50 years of living out there, never heard anything like it. And she went up to the top of the dirt road, and she had to actually park her car and sit for like 15 minutes to get control of herself enough again where she could drive. And it really freaked her out to where she told me, she said, Skylar, whatever the hell we got going on out here, tell it to leave me the fuck alone. And that kind of put me off for a little bit. And I think, you know, it may be mindset at the time, you know, different things like that, but I've gotten back more into it. And then one thing I touched on in the other episode, again, that this one is something that happens to me, not frequently, but happens a lot, is probably from the age of about 5 to 10, 12 years old, I would have dreams.
Oh, yeah.
About things that come true now. And it's not, oh, the Broncos won the Super Bowl, or, oh, it's nothing important. But it's like a 10-second snippet of a conversation I'm having with a coworker, or a 5-second snippet of gym class in 8th grade or something, that when it comes true, I can feel it, and I feel myself click into place in that moment, and I can predict exactly what's going to be said, and I know what's about to be said, and I say, oh my God, that was Clayton, and then Dale's about to say, and then he says it, and then he comes walking around the corner, and here he comes walking around the corner, and he says that, and then boom, it's done. It's never anything important. It's never hours and hours of things happening. It's just always a short little thing, and the way it makes me feel when it happens the same way. And it's not deja vu. It's very specifically that I remember dreaming about these happenings happen. And I don't have the dreams anymore, but the dreams still continue to come true to this day. And, you know, these kind of things, the way you feel in these moments and all that kind of stuff, it's hard to explain to someone else how you're feeling in that moment or what you're experiencing, but it's really interesting. Yeah, it's spooky.
Oh, tell them about, so the second picture I got of the ghost, right? Mm-hmm. I called him and said, Skylar.
Oh, thank you. That was the other one I want to talk about. Thank you.
He's like, dude, he was about to call me because I called him and like, dude, I caught something on camera. He goes, dude, I was about to fucking call you. Something ran up on my truck. So you want to tell him? Well, yeah. So I took the picture.
Yeah, so he calls me and he's like, Skylar, dude, I got I got a super good picture and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, Clayton.
Class A.
Well, I'm like, okay, well, guess what? You're never going to fucking believe this. That literally just happened to me. So I'm driving back from my uncle's house. I went to get some eggs. They got a bunch of chickens, and they live 15 minutes away from me on the toll road, not far at all. So I'm driving back, and, it's nighttime. Speed limit is 70 miles an hour. I got my cruise control set to 76, 78 miles an hour. I'm driving down the freeway like normal. And as you're driving, there's this area. It's a one-lane toll road out there. And where you're driving, if I'm driving back toward my house on the passenger side of my truck, there's this real steep hill that's like concrete. And then it goes down into a bunch of big, big rocks. And then it goes down into this flat area where there's like 3 or 4 ponds. There's some big electrical power lines and all types of stuff. And I see this movement out of the corner of my eye, and I kind of double take turn. And the best way I can describe what I saw is something, because creature, I don't want to try to act like I know what it is when I didn't. Something came running up from down below, and it came running up beside my truck. And the best way I can describe, because I only saw it for a couple seconds, how a sloth looks, that real rough texture of their fur and that grayish, greenish color, that's what it looked like, how it was coated. And the way it was running, it's hard to explain, but if you look at how like a dog runs, or a horse, or anything with 4 legs that are even, their backs are basically flat the whole time, the way they run, because their legs are the same length, basically. But if you've ever seen like kind of how a chimp runs or something like that kind of creature, how their back is at an angle because their forearms are longer than their back legs, and that was the way its back was situated, But the craziest part that really freaked me out is I'm driving 76 miles an hour, and this comes up onto the side of the road, and it's running the same speed as my truck for 2-3 seconds, and then it goes down that hill, down toward those ponds and everything. And I'm not going to try to say that I know what it was. I'm not going to try to say what it did, but it was definitely something I saw. And
it's
stuff.
either like a form of a Sasquatch, maybe like a juvenile Sasquatch or something, or it could be a chupacabra. It's Texas. It could have been a chupacabra, because there's different reports. Some say, it's a more of a dog-like creature. Some say it's a bipedal creature, and some chupacabra sightings have said it's a sloth-like texture, like skin or fur. So it could have been chupacabra. It could have been a type 3 or type 4 or whatever Sasquatch that just came up on your truck trying to scare you. I don't know what it was.
And unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up our episode here. We've got strict time constraints, but just to touch on real quick, and it could have been some kind of little person or little creature. That's something also I forgot to mention. I'm super into more than any other topic is little people. The Meme-Go-Wessing, Puckwudgies, gnomes, red caps, all that kind of stuff. So that'll be more episode topics in the future. Kind of just wrapping it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was just kind of a little reintroduction to everything.
Yeah.
We're not professionals at this. We just go into this and shoot. There's no cuts. This is real, unedited as it comes. So, we'll get better in our ramblings as we continue to get more experience and download things like that.
Maybe on our days off we can.
But that'll be the hope, is that we can kind of be a little more. That's our biggest hope, is to be more consistent with recording and releasing and all that stuff. So it's just been the YouTube inaugural episode of the Paranormal Warehouse, and we will try to be back with you guys as quickly as we can, right, Clayton?
Yeah. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. We'll see.
Yeah, but hopefully next week. So
all right.
Signing off.
Love you. Bye.